every one of you watching this screen, look out. Because soon, very soon, the most horrifying monster menace ever conceived will be oozing into this theater. Two teenagers see it first, like a falling star from outer space.
Boy, that was close. Hey, come on, I want to see if I can find it.
An old man finds it, touches it, and this is the shocking result. From then on, there's no stopping the blob as it spreads from town to town. It's indestructible. It's indescribable. Nothing can stop it.
This town is in danger.
How can it be stopped? Mob hysteria sweeps one city. Before long, the nation, and then the world could fall before the blood-curdling threat of the blob.
Welcome to Did You Know? The ESCO HVAC Show. We will see you in about 45 seconds or so. Make sure that you are subscribing to our channels, our LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Turn on notifications, and we are very excited to be here with you. It's almost time, about 30 more seconds. Make sure to grab your notebook and pen so you can jot down notes along the way, because at the end of the show, you could have an opportunity to ask our guests questions so we can dive a little deeper into these topics. And here we go. Welcome to Did You Know? The ESCO HVAC Show.
Well, hey everyone, thank you for joining Did You Know? The ESCO HVAC Show. So, are you ready to bring some chemistry into the classroom? Huh? Yeah? Maybe? I think so. What do you think so, Fallon?
Oh, always.
All right, everyone, we are introducing you to Fallon Dyle from Highside Chemicals. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Oh, yeah, and Katie joining in from St. Louis, Missouri. Thanks for being here with us, Katie. And everyone who's joining today, we really enjoy having you here. We want to know how large our community is growing. So hop in the chat. Let us know where you're joining in from. Let us know if you have any questions and comments along the way. You want to know what I get out of this great gig. I'll be happy to fill you in with all of that as well. So we were hanging out at the National HVACR Education Conference, and we did a podcast together. And it really enlightened me on a topic that is definitely growing in our industry, and it's very misunderstood, right? So in the classroom, Alan, we've got a lot of things that we are associated to. The HVAC and refrigeration industry, we are very much at the heart of what STEM is. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics. That's really who we are. So it's up to us to be able to teach the truth in the classrooms. And there's a lot of misperceptions about this topic. I even had my own when we first started talking about this, right?
Most people do, yes, absolutely.
All right, so the class was entitled Got Slime, right? And so we are starting to see what would we call it? Would we call it a growth? We call it a community.
Well, technically it would be a matrix, if you want to get technical. Community
That's
would
right.
be a bacterial community. But yeah, they're basically biofilms that are happening. That's been going on since probably about 2021 or so.
Yep.
It's about 3 years, and it's just becoming a bigger and bigger problem as these systems are coming in and everything's kind of changing.
Right.
Which
So
we'll dive into that here soon.
Exactly. So what we're talking about is we're talking about the new types of slime that we're encountering, particularly in the southeast of the country, in humid regions of the United States. But it's really becoming a major problem and people having a difficulty combating it. Thank you for joining us today. Glad to have you here, Murph. John, thank you for joining us in from Philadelphia as well. So you all up in the Northeast may not be encountering this yet, but I bet you do in one of the summers here pretty soon, right? Oh, there's one. Is definitely, this might actually be a new one for Mr. Silverstein down there in Florida, right? This is kind of the heart of it. Tell us a little bit about where we're seeing most of this new growth.
So basically, what you're going to see this in an area where the ACs are going to be running a lot more, where you're going to get a lot more condensate coming through those drain lines. So it's typically being found in southeast regions anywhere that is tropical, so not even in this country necessarily, in other ones. But there's a lot of other countries that are in hot and humid areas that actually don't have ACs at all.
True.
So, but any place that does, where these biofilms or these, we'll say this bacteria first because the biofilm is what it turns into. But these bacteria can withstand these high temperature climates and this high humidity. So this type of slime, this real thick slime that you can barely break, you're going to find this more in those areas. So other places like up in the north and the west, where you're not going to be seeing, super high temperatures and really bad weathering conditions, you're probably not going to find these. Or if you do, it's going to be very, very slow growing.
Sure.
Pretty much those areas where you're seeing super high, where we are, gets 100, 110 degrees heat index, 100% humidity, stuff like that. Those are the areas that you're going to see this really badly.
So one of the reasons we wanted to dive into this is we get a lot of comments, especially in social media, about this being Zuglia, which I initially had thought the same thing just because of what I had been reading, and it really is not, and it's definitely not treated the way that some of the perceptions in the industry are about what it actually is. And so that was our biggest concern. We wanted to be able to speak about this, but now we're going to get into it from a molecular level. We're actually going to dive deep into the DNA of this stuff so we can understand what it is, and we can discuss chemistry in the classroom as a component of our trade, our industry. And so I'm very excited about this. So let's talk a little bit about what we are actually dealing with.
Yeah, so just to kind of comment on the Zuglia idea. Mm-hmm. So Zuglia actually has its own family. That's why this is not considered. So we actually did take the time to get these samples. I took them and we actually extracted the DNA from it and found out what it was. So the first thing is you only fear things that you don't know. So that was the first step. Step one was figuring out what it was. Everybody was saying it was Zuglia, but come to find out it actually isn't. So Zuglia is in its own realm. So typically if you find like this really cloudy white stuff that's not super thick and seems to create that almost binding together, that typically is Zuglia, like a mass. Whereas this stuff is actually it's 7 different bacteria that are biofilm that are actually coexisting together. So none of them are, fighting each other for space or for nutrients or anything. They're in a perfect environment and they're just living together, and that's how they're attaching together and becoming these big masses that are clogging up the systems.
Okay, I had a comment just that my microphone, is my microphone hard to hear on your side? Let me double check on that.
It's coming and going. It's getting a little, but not too bad.
That is interesting. All right, let me double check something real quick and see.
Is that any better?
You're lower now.
All right, hold on a minute, everyone. We're going to go through some technical difficulties here and see what we've got. Is that any better?
Go a little bit higher.
All right, hold on. Let me make some other adjustments here. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
That sounds really good.
Okay.
On my end.
All right. How about everyone in the audience? Is that better? It said that I was muffled. Is it better now? Hope it's not an internet issue.
It's not as scratchy.
Okay. I'm going to double check one more time in my audio settings. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to leave it up on this screen and let's do a little deep dive into the history of this, and I'll go check out my audio connections here.
Okay. I think you are getting better, but I'll go ahead and kind of go through these. So basically, as we can see when you're looking at all of these different biofilms, and we do know the names, we're just not sharing this information because, time, cost, and all that. We don't want to just give it away. But as we can tell, a lot of these, they're all soil bacteria and root bacteria. So to kind of get an idea of what these are is basically these have been here for an extremely long time, and they're actually used in high temperatures, stuff like that, or high drought situations, and they keep plants and trees alive. So these are actually extremely important. So we have to also take time to respect it and to realize that we can actually kill this stuff, but we just don't want it in our HVAC systems.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a bit of echo, I will say that.
That might have been a setting on me, so I just moved another one to see where we're at.
Okay.
All right.
I don't hear any now.
Okay. So sorry about that, everybody. See, I told you we're going to be doing some science today.
Yeah. But as you can see, this is pretty much what all of these are.
Yeah.
And as you can tell, the oldest one that we have here is 1940, but I will say that this is just when it was found.
Okay.
And it could have evolved. So as they evolve, it changed, their names actually will change too.
Oh, really?
So that was that name of that biofilm at that time when it was found at that time. So most of the time what you'll see is as this list gets longer, that means that biofilm has evolved.
Sure.
So if it's UV resistant, that means at some point in time UV killed that. And then when it came back, it came stronger. So antibiotic resistant, that means that it started to, us maybe challenging it or something like that, and then it had to come back stronger.
Interesting. So when we look at how our environment has changed since, let's just say 1940, even though we've introduced different things along the way, it has actually just made this biological growth stronger and more resilient over time.
Yes, and as we can see, the big one that I really want to talk about is, of course, the one that's in red, the number 7. Now, as we can see there, that one is found back in 2003. But if we look down to that second to last, it has genome plasticity. That means it's really easy to evolve. Oh. That means that it can break apart and basically mutate into something better. So 2003 is when that one was found in that situation. Okay. So it's evolved over time. But the big thing with this one, as you can see, that's the strongest one. Mm-hmm. So it's enzymatic, antibiotic, disinfectant, UV, any resistance that you can think of. Nothing's really going to mess with this one. But the biggest problem with this one is the nosocomial infections. So that is typically when you would go to a hospital for, say you had a heart attack, or say you were there and you actually got sick while you were there from something that you didn't initially come in for. Mm-hmm. That this has actually been linked to, there's actually been many cases of it where it was found in people's, they call it sputting, but that's basically when you cough up, and they would find this in there and it was making people sick. So a big thing with this, if you get anything from this information, it would be if you encounter this stuff, it's not going to hurt you from the outside. And honestly, it's probably not going to mess with a lot of people. Think of it more of if you have underlying conditions or a low immune system, let's say you're a heavy smoker, anything that would kind of bring your immune system down. This is something that you do not want to get in contact with your nose, mouth, or your eyes. So if you touch it, you're fine, but you need to wash your hands. I've been recommending everybody to use gloves if they're dealing with it or touching it at all. Try not to breathe it in. But just make sure that you're not touching your face. And remember that when you put gloves on, it's still your hands.
Sure.
So until you remove those gloves, if you touch your face, then everything that was on those gloves is going to go on your face.
Get transferred.
So this is basically getting to know these biofilms, figuring out what we can do, what we can't do, and just getting to know them. Because this right here tells us, my biggest thing to show is UV isn't going to work with a lot of these.
Yeah.
Yeah. Antibiotics, enzymes, anything like that's not really going to work for something like this because they've they've evolved probably over thousands of years to survive. And so, every time that we've challenged it, it's gotten stronger.
Which would make sense because we get a lot of technicians stating that they will treat it with a variety of different chemicals, and it continues to come back. And that's why we wanted to have this discussion and deep dive into what this stuff really is, how it develops, how it grows, how it gains immunity to different chemicals, and what we can do for a solution. Believe me, we're going to have some solutions as we get forward. We're going to talk about all the different products on the market, what works, what doesn't, and the whys and the hows, so we can actually explain this to our students and our technicians from a chemistry perspective.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about how these grow. Let's hop over to the video real quick because it'll kind of come into play with this. So we're going to borrow a piece of a video from Chem Aqua. Chem Aqua is an industrial chemical manufacturer that deals with this in large scale. Like when we talk about scenarios like cooling towers, we talk about commercial fountains, but we can also talk about this in industrial waste water treatment and in water supply systems, which is kind of where it comes into play for us. So let's talk about how this evolves from a moisture perspective. Okay, so as we are starting to introduce these bacteria into an atmosphere, particularly think about like with water, right? And at first it starts building its own protective layer, basically like slime, right? That's why it's got the slime function to it. So it's actually starting to form a barrier to protect itself, and it's still inside, right? And traveling through like water stream. So if we think about like a condensate line off from an air conditioning system, whether it's residential, commercial, or it's an industrial, on a condensate line, we now have the potential for, like, say, these bacteria to be able to start collecting on the wall of a pipe. And isn't that kind of the scenario that we're seeing in the condensate line, Fallon?
Yes, sir. So basically the concept of it is, and we'll kind of go deeper into the very beginning lines too, because I know we've kind of discussed that too.
Yeah.
But you have to think of it from a perspective, okay, so we know that this is a root or a soil bacteria, right?
Right.
So if you're walking outside in your yard, these are going to get on the bottom of your shoes.
Okay.
So you walk inside your house, and then your air handler, your central air handler is going to suck up all the stuff that's in your house.
Yep.
And it's going to go over those coils. And you got to think, if your AC is running, then that means it's condensating. Water's really sticky. Think about how easy it is for dust to just stick to water, anything like that. So then it's sticking to that, and then it's going down into that drain line or that drain pan, and it's just growing very, very rapidly because it's got everything it needs. It's a warm environment, it's an untouched environment, and it's got water. And water is the most important thing on this planet. It gives life. So, that's a really big thing to think about is, people coming in and bringing that. But then we have to take that same concept and bring it to the very, very beginning of these being made. You got a manufacturing facility that let's just say 500 people work there. That means you have 1,000 feet walking in and out of that building every day. And they're going to have their own air conditioning system, more than likely, that's running through there. Sure. So this could actually potentially be starting all the way from the beginning of the manufacturing, because we're getting scenarios, for example, the technician that I work with in Florida, we have all these test houses with every aspect, like how many people live there, what animals, what manufacturer it was, where it came from, like all of this. And I have to say, getting to know this stuff, it does move rapidly. It does grow quickly. But at the same time, I still, in my, scientific opinion, feel that a house of 3 or 4 people with a dog still would not be clogging within a week or two with a brand new system. And so if you think about it, the concept, these don't need anything to live. They're UV resistant, they're antibiotic resistant, so they'll lie dormant. Now, they can't grow, they're not going to expand, but they're still there. It's one single microbe, right? So then it's sitting in that system and it's lying dormant. And then it gets put into, a new house, and then that system turns on, and now all of a sudden it's got water and it's got everything to start growing, because it's warm. So then you got an incubator basically, and then you have water. So, starting it from the very beginning, that's what we're working on now too, which we'll get into more of kind of what we're working on uh, moving forward with this. But, that's a big thing to think about too,
Yeah,
is how this
absolutely.
stuff is rapidly growing so quickly.
And once it starts growing, once it's in the environment where it can start getting more nutrients, now it starts forming much larger masses. It starts introducing additional new bacteria into the colony, and the entire colony is being protected. So the chemicals that we tend to see technicians treating with are things like bleach, which they believe is going to kill it. But because of what it actually is, really not doing that at all, because we've already became resistant, especially even to some of our detergents and some of our UV treatment. So let's step back real quick. I'm going to hop out of this one. Let's go back into the science behind it and the whys and hows, right? So we've talked about how it develops and regrows. Let's talk about the science behind understanding and finding out what it is. Tell us what you did to get to this point.
Yeah, so basically, this is more on the biology, molecular biology scale than the chemistry here. And this is just kind of like a very simple idea because, I don't want to freak anybody out.
Right.
But so basically, we took the slime. So that picture that you saw with that, I actually had that sent to me. And then we went up to my old college. And so basically, you take that slime, you break it up as much as you can, but it was very thick. So it was really hard to even pull apart. And so basically you put it in a centrifuge and you just spin it really, really, really fast for a long time. And that's basically going to separate out any moisture, anything. And then that's where you're going to be left where you have the pellet of cells and then that top looks like liquid.
Yes.
So then you would remove that liquid. And then there's a lot of different processes. You wash it. So you're just putting a lot of different reagents into the same tube. You're vortexing it, which means you're mixing it up really fast. And then you're going to throw it back in the centrifuge. And you're basically just pulling down and then removing a liquid layer, pulling down, removing a liquid layer, and then eventually you'll come to like a super concentrated DNA, which would then, and as you can tell, that would be put into a machine that would then run that sample, and it does amplification. It's PCR is what's called. It's polymerase chain reaction. So this is kind of what you would see, that other picture right there. Yeah. That's what you would see kind of during like a washing step where you put some more stuff in there and you shook it and you're pulling it down, and then you would remove that liquid layer and all that kind of white slime looking stuff. That's actually like your DNA that you're slowly pulling.
Okay, so in your centrifuge, we're trying to pull our solids to the exterior so we can remove the liquids. But if we think about like a condensate line that's running relatively horizontal, isn't gravity kind of having the same effect of drawing those heavier, denser particles to the bottom of our condensate line?
Yeah, because most of the time, let's say your machine's shut off for right now because you've hit your desired inside temperature, that water's just going to be sitting. Because, I mean, they set it to where it's a little lean. Yeah. So everything's going to go up. But, there's always like a little divot. So you always got a little water sitting. That's a lot of times why, like in your shower, that little spot will always start growing stuff. So, yeah, I mean, you're going to start seeing it at the bottom form first. But then as it starts to thicken, it can build up on itself and literally form around that entire thing because it's so strong, because they're all working together here. Absolutely. And this diagram is just a more complex, a little bit more detailed version of the previous one that's just showing, your raw specimen. We pulled it down, we centrifuged it, and then you see the washing step going down. Yep. And that's just kind of what we're doing to get that. We want the purest DNA that we can. We try to get all the mess out of there so we can get really good results, clean results.
Absolutely. So once we've gotten our solid sample, now we're going to analyze it, right?
Yes, sir. So basically this is your PCR amplification. So think about it literally like amplifying something. Yeah. Those lines, as you go into say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's the same specimen, but it's still showing. So I like to describe this as, think of it like when you start with grams and then you have say micrograms and then nanograms and stuff like that, like thinking of it in that kind of sense. That's what that is. So, okay, we're seeing it here. Oh, we're still seeing it here. We're still seeing it here. Oh, and then it starts to kind of level off as we get higher and higher in those concentrations, those really minute concentrations. So this is general PCR. So this is how the machine would read it. And then this data will actually go into a database, and it would link it to say, oh, okay, let's just say, for example, E10. All right, that has the same amplification that E. coli does of known samples.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where it's E. coli. So that also runs along. So those are usually called your controls.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that's pretty much how you would find out. And it's like an accuracy base. So it's with 99.1% accuracy, this is E. coli. Because everybody, you definitely got human error when you do these tests. If you miss a washing step, or say you forgot your, certain things, if you miss, you're going to have a bad extraction. But, sometimes you'll have a little bit more of a messier sample than, say, somebody else did. So the data can always kind of be skewed, but there's always room in there for those errors.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it links it.
All right. So you did actual DNA analysis of this to confirm that it is not Zuglia?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that those 7 different biofilms that we showed, I actually know the names of all of them. We hid it from the general public.
Sure. So that because if you take the time and the money and the investment to know what it is, then you can understand how to treat it. So as a manufacturer of the treatment, you don't want to just give that out to everyone. So I completely get that. But so that you've had 7 different biofilm growths within this material. And so now it's a matter of, okay, we know exactly what it is. Now we can start talking about ways to manage it, because we're probably not going to be able to actually kill it, are we?
No, as you can see, there's probably some stuff that you would directly put it on there and it would maybe make it break apart. But we also kind of, like in the beginning, what I said, when we think about what these biofilms are actually here for, morally, we really wouldn't want to. So, my thought process on it is we have to maintain the respect that it does deserve, because without these, a lot of plants and stuff wouldn't be here. So that's where we just want to create a non-conducive environment for it to not want to grow and get it out back to where it's supposed to be. Because if we try to kill it, because I have a theory on, things are only going to fight when they're challenged.
Sure.
So if we don't actually try and challenge it and don't try to hurt it, and we just make it an environment where it's like, hey, I don't want to be here anymore, let me get out of here, that's what we really work towards. But from what I can tell, it wouldn't be very easy to get rid of once it's already established that matrix anyway. But you could definitely prevent it from wanting to become that, if that makes sense.
It does. It's been very interesting to see how it has been treated in different ways. And in some instances it works, in others it does not, using the same chemicals, because you could have a couple technicians from one company in one area have completely different results. Once we understand it from this perspective, we'll go, well, if we are, say, treating it with a chemical and it is killing off some of the bacteria that is not being killed is now becoming immune to the chemicals that we were using before. And so it just continues to grow on its own path. And if we do use those chemicals again, it now has built up its own natural resistance to it.
Yes, absolutely.
They're
smarter than we are.
Yeah. And Todd, you're exactly right, man. It's not something to let grow in your system, right?
Yeah, definitely not. You're going to be cleaning up water damage pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, and I'm curious too, you're joining in from South Africa. Let us know, Todd, if they're having the same issues in South Africa that we're seeing here, because we've got some theories we're going to be diving into here in just a little bit on where we believe this has changed. Well, looky there. Let's set it up for that. So let's talk about some theories behind this.
Yeah, so basically, I've been working with a technician in Florida for about 2 years now on this project. And like I said, we have test homes with everything. And we've done them all on the same manufacturers. I'm not going to name names or anything because it's nobody's fault.
Yeah.
And so we came to the conclusion that this started happening in about 2021 after copper got switched, and now everything's switched to aluminum. So the reason this is because copper on its own is antimicrobial.
Sure.
So about 99.9% of anything that touches copper isn't going to grow. And I don't want to necessarily say it dies. I mean, some things it will kill, but it's just not going to grow anymore.
Sure.
It's almost like it gets stunned.
Right. It inhibits.
But aluminum doesn't have those properties. So that's kind of where we're seeing, because we're only seeing this in new systems.
That's right.
We're not seeing, and usually what would happen is you would have homes, say 6-8 years ago, that you went to and you had to unclog a drain line, but that was usually about every 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. Not very
Every
often.
3 to 5 years or so.
Mhm.
See, we're getting brand new systems that are clogging within 2 weeks.
I've heard that. That's why I wanted to address this topic, because it is quite the epidemic in some regions.
Yeah, it's really bad. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are losing contracts over this stuff because
Sure.
they don't know what it is. They don't know what to tell the customer. So there's no reassurance. So then the customer goes and calls another AC, repair person, and then they come in and they don't know either, or they're using stuff that they probably shouldn't be using, which is, of course, what we're going to get into as well. But it's a big issue, and a lot of people, I guess, because it's still a small range if you think about the entire United States.
Yeah.
But it is an important thing to talk about, especially because not only do you want your customers to not have to call you every 2 weeks and you look bad, but it is, as we can see, it was a little dangerous. There's a couple of these that aren't to really be played with.
Yeah.
And so, we got to look at it from both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when we have some bacteria that could be potentially growing in there that is, physically harmful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about what we can do.
Yeah, so basically, and I will say that the first thing here is preparing. We'll kind of dive into that a little bit more. So the best way to do this is you're going to have to manage it. There's no way that we can get rid of this stuff. There's no way that we're going to kill it. You don't want to. We went into that already. So what I'm advising people to do is when you get a brand new system in and you're about to do a new install, you need to clean the system first. And that's something that we're actually in the field doing right now. So I have a technician that is doing kind of 3 different things. We're going to use a completely solvent-based coil cleaner that you won't have to use water, doesn't rinse or anything like that. Then we're doing one that just has a normal coil cleaner that most people would be using, most techs would use, and rinsing it off. And then we're leaving one completely alone. And we've already kind of done that, but we're going to do this in a phase to try it out. But as you can see, if we kind of remember looking back at some of those different biofilms, some of them were not affected by high pHs or low pHs, which is typically what coil cleaners are based off of, is pH.
Right.
So it may not affect some of these either. So this is a theory that we're working on right now. But I definitely advise people, because it's not going to hurt.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, so I would definitely advise cleaning the system before you put it in. I would try to find something that you can do without having to use water. But if you do have to use water, let's use it to rinse off. Let's try not to have to put it on there first. Because more than likely, these bacteria are actually on the coils when you get them in a box brand new. And then other thoughts that we had too was when you're designing the system in the very beginning of a new home or a new business, think about your return. Maybe put it up on the wall instead of doing a floor return, so you're not pulling in so much dirt from the ground. And also, it's expensive, but it is a thought. If you ran your drain line copper, which a lot of people in different countries do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That will definitely help. But then we also have to think about the aspect of this stuff is starting at the coils and in the drain pan. So we do have to kind of think about that too. It can grow in the drain pan as well. So that may not help you, but it's definitely a thought. But if you're trying to go cost efficient, that may not be the best option.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed personally in the field in the last 5 years or so, our coils, especially our condenser coils, but now our outdoor coils, but our indoor coils also, tend to not be as cleaned, I believe, as what they were in the past. And you still have some discussions about that to have. But I've noticed that a lot of our coils have more of a oil residual film on them than they have in the past. And I'm sure that has to do with industrial and commercial manufacturing and, waste and water, usage. And so I'm curious if that has changed in the manufacturing of coils over time. That'd be another issue for us to talk about. But, as technicians, we have noticed that many of our coils do have more of a film to the actual fins than we have had in the past. And of course, they do coat most of our coils are manufactured flat, especially for the outdoor unit. They're manufactured straight, and then they have a fine mist of oil on them. Then they're put into a jig to be able to form the outdoor coils. Many of our, A coils and N coils and M coils are flat slabs, so may not go through the same processes. But that has been a topic of concern in many of our technicians, including myself, is doing proper cleaning on installations just to make sure.
Yeah, because we don't know. Manufacturers really do keep things very hush hush.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely tried to reach out and said, hey, I'll sign an NDA. This is just for me to know so I can help people. But I understand it at the same time. You don't want to give out your information, but that's a thought. Is it going through a cleaning process before it comes and gets in that box and ships to you, or is it not? And then, like you're saying, if there's extra lubrication, which makes sense in the manufacturing why they would use it, but that's a medium, kind of like water. Now it's a little bit more slicky, but it's still a sticky medium.
Right.
So that can make it easier. And then, like I said, you got these huge manufacturing facilities with so many people in there. You don't know what's getting on those. And if they're not going through a cleaning, then that's definitely something to think about if we can get that information from them to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are recommending preparing our installation, doing a proper clean. Yeah. And then as we go forward, let's talk about the whole treating side of things.
So basically, once you kind of prepare, and I like I said, my theory is if you clean the system beforehand and it does actually work, you're not going to see this growth as quickly as you would typically see it. So then we have to come up with a treatment plan. So I suggest finding a treatment that works for you, that you've tested out, which we're going to go through some different options that are out there, and just remembering the concept, because if you can conceptualize things and understand them, then you can always win. And so just remember that we're really wanting to create a non-conducive living environment. And the big part about that is having something that's there and that's continuously there, because this stuff is running. And if you think about a concept of a home in Florida, on average, and this is just average, you could see about 50 gallons of water go through that in one day.
In a 24-hour.
Yeah, so think about if you wanted to not have to go back to a house for 6 months, you have to really think about that concept. What are you putting there, and is it going to last?
Okay. And the education, which is why we're here today, to help understand. Yay! We're doing the chemistry side so we understand we're not here to kill, we're here to control.
Yes.
And that's a different perspective than what we've been thinking about in the past. We've been in the, hey, we got to kill this stuff, and let's find the strongest things we can to kill it, and let's start doing that. So let's just talk about some of the different options, and I'm sure there's going to be opportunity for controversy on a lot of these. I'll probably have some emails from manufacturers, but we just want to be realistic and talk about ways that we are treating this particular growth of biofilms that we're talking about. So this may not be universal for all growths in a drain line, but for the biofilms that we are encountering, let's talk about this particular and ways to treat it.
Yeah, and just kind of like you'd said before, this I know I work for a company that does certain things. I'm not bashing any. I try to keep names out of it as much as I can. This is just facts. Mm-hmm. And I did give everybody their due diligence on it. I'm trying to look at it from the most neutral way possible and based off of the science that we went over. So, for instance, UV is one that a lot of people use. And kind of another thing I wanted to mention, this is very specific to this biofilm. So in other places, like if you're using UV and you're like, it works, then that's awesome.
Yeah, it's treating that particular scenario that it was designed to treat.
Absolutely. And that's why I said treat. I'm not saying treat with what I made. I'm just saying find something that works for you that's safe, and let's go that way. So the UV, it does have pros. It can slow the growth of some bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the thing. We have 7, and I believe 4 out of the 7 were UV resistant. So that means that you're probably knocking 4 of them down, but you still got 3 that are coming up.
Yeah.
And then from what I've read, I've never installed one of these, but they said that they're fairly easy to install.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some pros on it. So the cons with it is expensive. I mean, just that one system in particular, runs $240, and then you have to change the bulbs every year most of the time, and those range anywhere from $50 to $100 a pair.
Plus installation.
I'm sorry?
Plus installation.
Yeah, plus installation, yeah. And then, as we said, 4 of these biofilms it's not going to work on. Another thing with the UV is it's only going to affect that area where it's installed. So most of the time they put it right there on the A coil.
Yeah.
So it'll work there, but you got to think this stuff is moving. So it's going down. This isn't in your drain line. This isn't in your drain pan. So we have to think about that concept too. And then also my big thing with UV is it is dangerous. And, think about when you have something sitting outside and it gets in the sun for a long time, how it degrades over time.
Plastics.
Let's kind of remember that concept too of, it is dangerous for metals and stuff like that over a long period of time. So that's just a thought.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where we're at with UV. With this one's a relatively new product. I love the concept of it. I love the continuous treatment that it offers. I thought another really cool thing was that if a technician actually installs it, it will automatically contact that company when that float switch is triggered. So the moment that trigger goes off and the system will not work anymore, it will actually automatically contact the service technician provider, and they can come out and, clear your line and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
They do offer different fills. They have a 3-month and a 6-month. One's a little bit more concentrated than the other. So the big cons on this is when you have anything that's enzyme based. So enzymes are actually biological. They're a living thing.
Sure.
They only last about a year. So if that gives you a shelf life of a year. And it has to be under very optimal conditions. So they will, and as we can see if we go down, they have pretty strict temperature restrictions. So they'll start to denature at about 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So in South Florida and everything, it gets about 110, 120. So you have that in your truck. Everything in there is no longer doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Oh, sure.
In a sense, it dies. They don't actually die, but that's the concept. And then also, if you live anywhere where it gets below freezing a lot, they just stopped working once again. But also, as we saw, a lot of our bacteria was antibiotic resistant. So these enzymes actually really aren't going to work on a lot of these. Another concept is it solely goes into the drain line. So we're only treating that one area. I did notice that people can buy this online. Just a regular homeowner can buy this online. So I know that kind of makes technicians a little weary sometimes. Because if they set it up and then call, what if they don't know a lot about this and they get called to a home, not a lot of information yet. And it is kind of relatively expensive. That system right there is $130, and then you got about anywhere from $30 to $45 for refills for that particular product.
Sure.
This one, I honestly, I don't really like this one. I feel like it's a concept that somebody just was trying to make some money. The pro on it does have the continuous treatment, so it has a hose that goes into the drain line and it's attached to a pump. So the cons on this, it is vinegar based. So basically this concept is you go buy a jug of vinegar, you go set it in your air handler area, you pull the hose in it and you attach it to that. That's the concept. So a lot of people don't realize, but vinegar is actually really acidic. It has a pH of 2.
Right.
So if this gets on any of your metal and stuff like that, it can hurt it. So that's another thing. And this is very reliant on a homeowner too. This is being sold directly to people just like technicians. So if you got somebody dealing with vinegar, a regular homeowner trying to put this and they happen to get it on the coils or something, it could hurt. Same thing, it only treats the drain line. So we're only treating one area. and it is kind of relatively expensive. So that's $100. And then if this is a continuous pump of vinegar, and that you're probably buying one of those a week, so it can get expensive.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. I can see that.
And this is kind of another one where I believe they just kind of tried to create something to make some money. This one also is a continuous treatment into the drain line. The cons for this one, I actually, if you scan it, it's real hard to read, but I know what's in it. It says it on the back, but it's basically detergent and surfactant based. So it's almost like, think of it like soap,
right,
in a concept. So that's not going to work on these at all. Soap and water is pretty much what this one is. But from a different perspective, it is only treating the drain line. This is sold direct to customers just the same. And that little setup right there is $135. They also claim that one bottle will last 2 years, and there's no way it would have. I couldn't even see doing a drop that would last that long. So yeah, this one I definitely, just looking at, I wouldn't recommend this one. It's worse than the other one. So this one out here, I really do like this one. It has a continuous treatment, and they do guarantee it up to 6 months. I will say that this is actually patented, so I know what's in it, but I'm not going to say it to the general public. You're free to go look at the patent and see what chemicals are in it, but I won't actually unveil that because I'll respect the patent. But the cons are, it does have some dangerous chemicals in it, but I will say that I do like the fact that they make it to where you never touch that bag. So when you go to change it out, you'll unscrew it and you'll put another one in. You never come in contact with the chemical, so I do like that aspect. The other thing with this is you do put it into the drain line, so you're only dealing with the drain line once again. And thinking about it from just a reasonable perspective, you do have a potential for a leak. So when you put this in and attach it in through your PVC line, if you don't do it properly, there's a little kink or a move or something, you actually do run into a possible problem of your line leaking. So this one is my next best favorite. So this one, like I said, I won't say names or anything. Most people, if they use it, they know who this is. So they did a really good job on this one. It has a hydrophobic gel layer on it, so when you spray it, it creates a layer and everything kind of feeds off of it, and it does stay easy application. So it has a spray, so it allows you to treat multiple different surfaces, so that's great. It is silicone based, so it's slow dissolving. Still kind of back and forth on if that's good, depending on what kind of silicone it is, because if it is a polymer, so it doesn't really technically break down. It does contain all safe chemicals. They've always been really big on that, so I definitely like that part, and it's very cost effective. You can buy that in, probably $20-$30 a technician's price, and they can use that multiple times. Nice. So the only one thing I will say about this product is it is enzyme based. So as we talked about it before, when you use the enzymes, you have the problem of, okay, I can't store this in my truck if it's really hot. Everything in it's not going to work. So it really limits your investment, and then it also limits your storage. And then also, because it's enzyme based, it's not going to work on a lot of these biofilms.
Resistant
and
biofilm.
And then a pro or con, kind of depending on who you are, but they recommend retreating every 3 months. So if you want to go back to a house every 3 months, awesome. But if you don't, then so this is what we've actually developed here at Highside based off of all the research and stuff that we've done. So our product's called Biofilm Remover. Tells you exactly what it does. So the pros on this one is there aren't any biological additives in it. So there's nothing that's living in there. So you don't have any storage restrictions, and it has an indefinite shelf life. So that thing can sit in your truck, and it can be 150 degrees in there, and nothing's going to mess with it. So we didn't go with the layer part of it because a lot of people in HVAC don't like layers. If you create some type of coating or a layer, people believe it messes with heat transfer, so we wanted to kind of try and make everybody happy. So instead, we created a very thick gel to where it'll last over those kind of washes of the water coming through. It's made with all safe chemicals. It has an easy spray application, so it allows you to treat multiple surfaces, so the coils, the drain pan, and the drain line. So we field tested it up to 8 months. After 8 months is when we started seeing regrowth. So we didn't actually have a clog in 8 months, but we did have regrowth. So we did see the stuff start to come back. And that was just because the product had finally washed away.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
then, of course, it's very cost effective. You're looking from a range of anywhere from $20 to $30 a bottle, and it'll last you a long time. So the real big con with this one is thinking about your customer, getting to know them a little bit. Hey, how long do you run your AC? What do you typically keep it on? And thinking about the concept of, let's say 50 gallons go through there a day. You need to make sure that you apply a good thick layer so it doesn't wash away faster than when you want to go back to that house, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, it does.
But that's what we've worked on, and it's been doing really, really well in the field. It is available now to purchase and everything through us. And we're still working on other parts to kind of create a series to really help you from beginning to end of this. We want to make it to where potentially you would only have to do annuals and go in, or even longer. But I believe that the testing in the field with the cleaning aspect of it that we're really going to go, I think that's going to be a big help in us figuring out, okay, how can we maintain this stuff even better? So,
Right. So creating a long-term solution. And it all comes down to the science of understanding what it is, right?
Absolutely.
I'm sure every one of these chemicals has the opportunity to treat a certain type of bacteria in a certain scenario. But what we're encountering, particularly in these humid areas, these biofilms, they're very unique and they're very specific on how they need to be treated. And so let's make sure we cover the things that are not recommended for the treating of biofilms in particularly.
Yeah. So my big thing, if you take anything from this, is remember these aren't to be played with. Don't, touch them. But my next big thing is do not use bleach. Bleach, I do like to say that bleach has a purpose in this world to an extent. It is not an HVAC. There's not one HVAC technician in the world that needs to have bleach in their truck. It is extremely dangerous vapor. So you have to think of this from a long-term perspective. Let's say that you're a career technician, and let's say I'm going to do this for 30 years. If you breathe in bleach every day for probably even 10 to 15 years, something's going to go wrong. We can get into DNA methylation and all that kind of stuff and mutated genes and creating tumors all day. But if you breathe something in that you shouldn't be breathing in, eventually there's going to be a bad copy coming in. Right. And I would say cancer, COPD, bronchitis, any types of things that would go with your airways, you will have a problem. But I'll say from a health perspective, but let's just say from a just straight up chemistry perspective, bleach will actually I always like to say bleach likes to make things look pretty. So it only does the cap. So as you can see on that bottom left, the structure of a cap. So you have the cap, the stem, and the root of a mold spore. So bleach will only make the top of that white. Everything else, it's almost like plucking the top of a flower and then it growing back. It's the same concept. Okay. So bleach actually doesn't kill mold or anything as it says it does. You just pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to say it does, and the EPA lets you get away with it, kind of thing. But it actually doesn't do that. So it's not actually going to work. It just looks like it works. Another big thing with bleach is it's an extremely strong oxidizer. So if you got a drop on that system at all, it's going to corrode it and create problems. There was actually a group of techs that were pouring this all over the AC systems in Florida, and they had a huge class action suit because it literally corroded all the systems in these people's homes.
Wow.
So that's another big thing to think about. Bleach doesn't need to be anywhere around metal. And then if we think about it just from a preventative perspective, if you pour bleach in the drain pan and the drain line, it goes away. So you poured it in there and it just washed away. So it's not preventative at all.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
But it's really dangerous.
So remove the bleach, period.
Yeah, no bleach.
Okay.
No bleach. So, and this is a product that we also manufacture. This is more of, I just wanted to say, if you were in a situation where, say, someone's home was molded, let's just say it was molded inside the air handler unit for some reason, and you would want to use bleach, I would recommend using this. It's called Sporgo. So this one is actually all natural ingredients. So it will not hurt you. You can get it on you. You can breathe it in. It's not going to hurt you at all. And this one actually affects the cap stem and the root. The only difference between the Sporgo and the Bleach is kind of funny. So Sporgo may not always look like it did the job, but it did. Whereas Bleach looks like it did the job, but actually didn't. So this would be more for like your drywall or like plywood, something like that. I'm not recommending you put this on a system, in the drain line, nothing like that. This is more of, okay, well, hey, I got a house that's got mold in it. That's when I would use Bleach. I still wouldn't use Bleach, and I would use this.
Okay, that makes sense.
And there's other products that are probably out there that are safe that will do the same thing. This is just one that I know because we make it.
Yeah. So PK, I don't know if you just joined us. This is really what the whole conversation has been about. I'm glad you did join us though and are asking about these. Will it break up the buildup in the drain? Well, if we have a biofilm buildup within the drain, that's what we're talking about. No, if you use a bleach and it happens to be able to clean things out, all we're really doing is contaminating the area with bleach and maybe removing some of the bacteria. But now we're actually making that growth stronger and more resistant to the chemicals down the road. So it is a good question. I mean, that's really why we're discussing this, because of the misperceptions that even I myself had going into this. Because I initially thought, I got a bunch of growth in this drain. I'm going to use bleach and clean it out and off we go, not realizing exactly what I was doing with that.
Yeah. And just to kind of piggyback on the will this break down buildup in the drain. So we recommend that if you go to a home and there's a clog, you need to go ahead and suck that out with a vacuum or blow it out with a gallo gun, kind of however you do things. And so the product that we created, so the biofilm remover, it's preventative.
Yep.
So this wouldn't be necessarily where, oh, hey, I have a clog, so let me just spray all this stuff in there and let it break down. When it's already matured to that matrix where it's that thick, it's really hard to break up on its own. So you would want to go ahead and get rid of the problem. And then our biofilm remover will be there, kind of like a clean new surface that will prevent the buildup from then on. And just to make sure, because he came in the Sporgo, this is a bleach replacement for if you had mold or something in drywall or on somebody's wall or plywood or anything like that. Sporgo is not recommended for preventative of the slime buildup. That's what biofilm remover is for, just to make sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Good clarification.
And this is just kind of letting everybody know that, the biofilm remover product that we did come out with, we're not done. We hit the 8-month mark and we're like, all right, let's go ahead and get this out. Let's help techs now. They need it now. Because we know that it at least works and it's going to help them, kind of let's alleviate this a little bit. But we are continuing to work on a drain pan series. We're trying to, get it to at least that 1 year mark to where you would go anyway to do a preventative maintenance or coil cleaning or something. We don't want it to be where you're just getting all these calls and it's like, dude, my stuff is still clogged. You came 2 weeks ago. That's what we're trying to alleviate right now. But we are working, me and the technician in Florida, we're working. We got a whole bunch of different troubleshooting. We got 3 different things working to try and kind of create a series to guard you from here all the way to the end to where you're going, because it's just your normal time to go and not, oh, hey, I need you to come now. This is an emergency kind of thing. I will also say that I am trying to talk to manufacturers about this issue and to try and see if there's a way that we can actually help y'all from the very beginning. Because like I mentioned before, I definitely feel like this is something that is starting at the very beginning and it's only getting worse throughout. So we are definitely trying to do that. It is really hard though, because manufacturers do have their way of things and they don't like people knowing. And it's understandable, but we are trying to do that as well, to kind of at least let them know this is what this is what you need to do to prevent it before it gets to the customer and they install it. But for anybody that's just coming in, we are recommending to try and clean a brand new system, especially if it's made of aluminum, before you set it up. We do believe that this will help slow that growth from the very beginning and then preventing it throughout with a biofilm remover, anything that's been working for you, to kind of let's keep this at bay and keep learning and working to figure it out.
Yeah, it's all about the science, understanding what we're actually working with. If we think about it in the field, as technicians, we learn how to repair things by completely understanding the sequence of operation of how it functions. Right?
Yeah.
If I walked up to a piece of machinery and I knew nothing about how it actually operates, I would be limited on my ability to diagnose it and to properly treat it.
Yeah.
So we're really looking at it from the molecular perspective of the biofilms that we are now seeing, particularly in our southeast, in our humid areas of the country, that are new within the last few years, particularly since we have changed from copper aluminum coils to all aluminum coils. And it is a very difficult thing that is causing a lot of grief with many technicians and contractors. And so we're here for a solution. That's
Yeah.
all we're really here to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what I always say. I'm a problem solver. That's my job. Not really trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to teach you.
and absolutely, that's why when we're talking about this, I was like, well, we got to talk about your product because they're paying for you to be here to be on our show. And when we bring it all into one big educational package and go, hey, there are a lot of things out there. Let's understand what each of them does because they all have their purpose for particular things. But this particular one that we're talking about, these intrusive biofilms, they're very unique and need very special treatment. And doing a true DNA analysis of what they are to be able to say this is indeed who you are gives us the opportunity to understand how we can work with them, control them, not kill them.
Yes, absolutely. That's the big thing is if you don't try to do it if it's already there. Let's just get it out, get it back into the environment, and then let's start from scratch and let's prevent. Let's just make it not want to be there. And I think about it like if you're someone that doesn't like going out a lot and you're in a noisy environment. So if they don't like noisy environments, then that's what we're creating. So we're just we're creating something to where they just don't want to grow. They don't want to be there at all. They just want to be back out. And so that's kind of what we're doing. Because if we do that, I believe that we can slow their evolution down as well. Because we're not creating a challenge anymore. We're actually helping them get where they need to be. Because the AC system is not where they need to be. They need to be outside with the grass and the roots and the plants and the trees and doing what they were meant to do.
That is an interesting perspective.
Yeah. Well, I like I care about the planet a little bit.
I believe that. I see that. Wow.
Yeah.
And so we really appreciate all of the in-depth, as Howard mentioned, all of the CSI style investigation to understand exactly what it is.
Yeah. Well, that's where I got my start was forensics. So yeah.
Absolutely. John, that's not one that we covered with the bipolar ionization. Kind of what we were talking about is if it is treating the scenarios that it was introduced to treat, excellent. I've got one myself. And it has definitely made some differences, particularly for the suspended particles in my air. That has made a very significant difference. Now, when we're talking about these biofilms, we're really saying that there's really only going to be a way to treat them properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and any other questions? Yeah, please bring them in. We want to discuss this. Yeah, Todd, thank you for joining us from South Africa, out traveling, and man, that sounds like a pretty good gig, getting out and checking out the world, learning about HVAC and teaching about HVAC. So definitely do a little investigating scenarios while you're out there. Be a CSI for us, Todd, and see if they're encountering some of the same scenarios, particularly in these all aluminum indoor coils.
Yeah. And just to kind of let anybody know that watches this, I have been doing most of my stuff in Louisiana and Florida. But if there's anybody kind of even overseas, we are a global company, so we do deal with international customers. I'd love to collaborate with anybody. If anybody has questions, y'all can, reach me. If you go onto our website and go to contact us, I get any of that stuff too. You can also email me directly. But if you go to our contact us from the link down there, I will get that. So if it's anything specific to biofilm, you will get in contact with me and then we can go from there. I'd love to work with anybody that has some different systems, different things. Troubleshooting is the biggest thing right now that we're doing too. So, if you're in South Africa and you're getting slime, send me some, I'll dig into that one too. And we can actually compare and see, okay, hey, they're in a tropical area over here. Let's see if we're getting the same here that we are in the U.S. So, yeah, I'm definitely open to this. Is going to be a project that's probably going to go for a little bit longer for sure. So I'm always down to work with anybody. And if anybody has questions, we're always really, our big thing is quality and customer service. You call us, we're going to answer. Sometimes I might even answer the phone if I'm not in the lab. So, you can always talk to us and we'll always, talk to you and, see what's going on. So, yeah, I'm here if anybody ever wants to do anything with this or you're having this issue somewhere else that we didn't mention. So just kind of throwing that out there.
I love it. So let's connect with Fallon Dyle at Highside Chemicals at highsidechem.com. We appreciate you being on the show, bringing the deep science, bringing the chemistry into the classroom. I'll give a lot of people the extra little ammunition that they need when the technician comes up to them and says, I'm just going to treat this with bleach. Now we can, as an educator, go, no, you're not. And I am going to tell you why. And I'm going to show you with science and chemistry.
Yeah, and it also helps the technicians reassure their customers that they actually know what's going on too. Yeah. So
what is this? I don't know. It's not in my repertoire.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for having me. This has been great. As many people as I can get this information out to, I'd like to, just for safety reasons, for sure.
Indeed. And we'll be posting this. This will be all on our channels. It'll be on the HVACR Learning Network. All of these are there. If you're needing CEUs, you can come back, watch the video, take an assessment, and actually get a printed out CEU for that. So definitely go over and take a look at the HVACR Learning Network at hvacr.elearn.network. This one will be up within the next week or so. And thank you so much, Fallon, for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's been great.
It's been a lot of fun. We'll see you all next week on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show. We're doing a live road show from A.O. Smith to go down and look at their newest generation of heat pump water heaters. Ooh. That's going to be fun. All right. Yeah. Bye, y'all.